A new report published in the Lancet Planet makes the point that 33,000 Indians in 10 Indian cities die of air pollution annually at pollution levels below India's current air quality standards. This means that India's clean air threshold is simply too high and needs to match or get closer to what the World Health Organization recommends. After all, there is little point in having national clean air standards which don't prevent the death of citizens. So what does the report say? Well, for starters, 33,000 deaths in 10 cities can be attributed to air pollution levels above World Health Organization norms. This is the first multi-city study that assesses the relationship between short-term air pollution exposure and death in India. Local air pollution sources are likely to be more toxic than distant sources. Data from 2008 to 2019 across India's largest cities suggests that approximately 7.2% of all deaths in India are attributable to short-term daily PM 2.5 exposure. Graded action plans to deal with several air pollution levels are not enough, since the dangers of air pollution, even at low levels, is quite extreme. Now, in terms of individual cities, this is what the data says. 11.5% of all air pollution-related deaths, or 12,000 deaths each year in Delhi, can be associated with short-term PM 2.5 exposure, higher than what the World Health Organization deems acceptable. Mumbai was the second highest. 5.6% of all deaths, of approximately 5,100 deaths every year, were attributable to short-term PM 2.5 exposure, higher than the World Health Organization's guideline value. In Kolkata, 7.3% of all deaths, or 4,700 deaths each year, were linked to short-term PM 2.5 exposure. Chennai, 4.9% of all deaths, or about 2,900 deaths, were attributed to short-term PM 2.5 exposure. And in Bengaluru, 4.8% of all deaths, or about 2,100 each year, were attributable to short-term PM 2.5 exposure. And in Hyderabad, 5.6% of all deaths, or about 1,600 deaths a year, were linked to short-term PM 2.5 exposure. What the report actually means is that what we in India consider clean or acceptable air is simply not clean and is not acceptable, since exposure to PM 2.5 at levels lower than what is accepted in India is causing deaths. And the data is just from 10 cities. The numbers across the country would be much, much larger. Now consider this, and this is important, the difference between Indian norms and World Health Organization norms for exposure to PM 2.5. India's air pollution threshold for PM 2.5 is at 60 micrograms for a 24-hour period of exposure. The World Health Organization air pollution threshold for PM 2.5 for the same period, 24 hours, is 15 micrograms, right? Just a fraction. In other words, Indian norms are 4 times higher than what the World Health Organization defines as the threshold for clean air. Similarly, India's air pollution threshold for annual exposure to PM 2.5 is 40 micrograms, while the World Health Organization guideline states that the annual exposure to PM 2.5 should be just 5 micrograms. In other words, India tolerates annual PM 2.5 exposure, which is 8 times that of the World Health Organization's